So the Pretoria city centre was the scene of a large EFF protest march today. Party leaders called on their members to ignore COVID regulations and gather outside the offices of the Health Regulator SAHPRA. The party is accusing the health products regulator of being biased by not approving Chinese and Russian vaccines for use in this country. Let's discuss this now with Dr Aslam Dasoo, convener of the Progressive Health Forum. The forum, along with a long list of other health associations, has sent out a letter voicing their extreme concern at the EFF's attack on the health products regulator. Doc, thank you so much for joining us. So the EFF believes SAHPRA is captured by certain financial interests and pharmaceutical companies. What exactly are their claims, and why do you and other science and medical bodies say they are completely misinformed?
Good evening, Sally, and good to be with you. Look, it's very clear to us that from reading the statements of the leadership of the EFF over the past few days, that they have a fundamental lack of understanding about what SAHPRA represents. SAHPRA is a statutory body. As such, it is defined by rules. And you and I, have great comfort when we consume medicines from a pharmacy or from doctors that we are getting the right stuff, that it is safe, that it is efficacious, because SAHPRA has done its work in confirming that. Now, if you want extraneous forces, political or commercial lobbies, to be the determinants of whether medicine is approved for use in this country, you and I are going to lose that confidence in this medicine. Moreover, SAHPRA is regarded internationally as a fine regulator, and any diminution of that remit is going to cause a huge international fallout for us as well. Then watch the prices of medicines for us. So I think the EFF here has missed a trick. SAHPRA is not the agency that determines how many vaccines there are in the country. And their march, ostensibly to save lives, was gobsmackingly contradictory. Because you had all of these people in the midst of the worst wave, of the worst pandemic we've had, congregated like this. Clearly, I can assure you, many of them perhaps, were COVID positive. It is just a statistical fact. And that they will spread to others, who will spread to even more people. And many of those will end up in hospital at some point. Some of whom will end up in ICU, and some of whom will die. So the entire premise of the march is in doubt, and the construct of the march is in doubt. I listened to Mr. Malema, and at the outset, he made some very rational comments, like, we were told to go into lockdown, and we did, because we were promised that the health system is going to be strengthened, that we will have vaccines. Well, neither of those things eventuated. And so he's correct as far as that is concerned. But that's not SAHPRA's fault. That is a grievance he should take to the government. So the march was actually on the wrong street, in a sense, in Pretoria. SAHPRA does not solicit applications. Applicants apply to it for registration. And as far as we know, they approve all medicines according to a set regime. Yeah. The vaccines which have been approved, they have used exactly the same rules, and any new vaccines will have to follow the same rules.
I just want to jump in there. You say, as far as we know, how do we know? Because surely no one is above the law, no regulator is above the law, no one is beyond the possibility of temptation or coercion. So how do we as members of the public know for sure that SAHPRA is trustworthy?
Okay, so it's, first of all, as it's a regulatory body, so it is accessible to the public. Its deliberations are accessible. It also is run through a series of committees, expert committees, so academics and scientists drawn from various universities and institutions who make up the approvals committee. It has a governing board which doesn't make the final decision on any registration. It may register it in an administrative fashion, but the decisions on which medicines are approved for use is made by expert committees. And these are in place and they are above board. There's absolutely no reason to doubt their veracity or their credibility. So the idea that you can go to SAHPRA and bully the board or the chairman or the CEO and say, we think you guys are corrupt and we want medicines to be registered because we don't believe that you're doing your job, is just plain absurd.
I want to talk to you a little bit.
There's no possibility of that.
I want to get to the issue of politics and science and medicine, because we've seen the two come together during COVID. Even here in South Africa, we have scientists and researchers and top medical people giving suggestions to the politicians who then have to make a final decision. So in many ways, politics and science during COVID has had to work hand in hand. But what are the dangers of politicians inserting themselves ahead of the science? And there was a great article written by Rebecca Davis of Daily Maverick, reminding us about the kind of things that former US President Donald Trump said about, his foray into medical advice, suggesting at one point that maybe if we ingested bleach, it might work against the virus. It can be a very dangerous cocktail. How do we get that balance right?
Well, I think, first of all, you have to have a constitutional order that insists that that's the only way things are done, that the scientists and the scientific fraternity has its own remit. It must make its findings known. The politicians do have the right to accept or reject those findings and make decisions, on their own. And they will then have to account to the electorate. And that's the normal democratic process. But you're quite right. It is a dangerous and a toxic arrangement, especially in this highly intensive atmosphere that the pandemic has created. And we've had numerous instances of the scientists and the politicians falling out. So, that being said, SAHPRA, and just to come back to that, SAHPRA doesn't involve itself in those matters. SAHPRA's remit is to evaluate the safety and efficacy of medicine and approve its registration and its consumption in the country. And that's all that it can do. The act forming SAHPRA specifically disallows such political influence to determine what it does. And I think it's something we need to protect, because it's not just for the government. It is also for the EFF and its members, and for you and for me. And so it belongs to us, all of that. And if you're going to make wild accusations, then certainly back it up with evidence. I heard all sorts of strange things about the people at SAHPRA and about the chairman, and none of that is true. We know this for a fact. Yeah. So I think we must be clear that this was a political action by the EFF. It has nothing to do with what SAHPRA does, and it has actually created the risk of a super spreader event while it was doing this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for chatting to us this evening. That was Dr. Aslam Dasoo, convener of the Progressive Health Forum.